Let's talk about Burundi, a tiny heart-shaped country in Africa's Great Rift Valley, often overlooked on the world stage, but rich in stories and spirit. Nestled between Rwanda, Tanzania, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi is a crossroads of cultures and histories. It's a land of rolling green hills, sparkling lakes, and breathtaking scenery that seems to stretch on forever, inviting you to explore its hidden corners. But beneath the beauty lies a complex history, shaped by centuries of change, resilience, and struggle. The main groups here are the Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, each with their own unique stories and traditions. For centuries, these communities shared language, culture, and even families, weaving a social fabric that was both strong and flexible. Ethnic identity was fluid. Your job, your role in society, or your social status often mattered more than any label you carried. In fact, it was possible to move between groups, and people often did, blurring the lines that outsiders would later try to draw. The TWA, the original hunter-gatherers of the region, make up about 1% of the population and have long been marginalized, yet their presence is woven into Burundi's roots. Hutu, mostly farmers, are the majority. Their connection to the land runs deep, shaping daily life and tradition. Tutsi, traditionally cattle herders and aristocrats, are a minority, but their influence has been significant throughout Burundi's history. These numbers, once just part of daily life, would later become the fault lines for conflict and division. For a long time, people got along, united by a king, the Mwami, who stood above ethnic divisions and brought people together under a shared identity. Society was built on relationships, trust, and cooperation, not rigid categories or boundaries. But then, outsiders arrived. Colonial powers eager to organize and control, redrawing lines that had never truly existed before. That's when Burundi's peaceful balance began to unravel, as old ways were challenged and new divisions took root. The story was about to change, dramatically, setting the stage for a new and turbulent chapter in Burundi's history. Enter the Germans, the first Europeans to lay claim to Burundi in the late 19th century, bringing with them new systems of control and foreign ideas about power. Then came the Belgians, who took over after World War I, inheriting the colony and its people as if they were property to be managed. The Belgians, obsessed with order and hierarchy, decided Burundi's flexible society was too messy for their tastes. They brought rulers and calipers, measuring noses and heights, convinced they could scientifically sort people into categories, declaring Tutsi superior and Hutu inferior. This racist myth would shape everything that followed. In the 1930s, the Belgians issued ethnic ID cards, freezing identities that had once been fluid and flexible, turning social differences into hard, unchangeable lines. Suddenly, your future depended on a bureaucrat's stamp, your opportunities, your status, even your safety, all reduced to a single word on a piece of paper. The Belgians favored Tutsi for power, locking Hutu out of government, education, and the military, creating a system where privilege and exclusion were written into law. Resentment grew and ethnic lines hardened as communities that once lived side by side were now divided by colonial decree. The Hutu majority began to see Tutsi as colonial collaborators, deepening mistrust and fueling anger. The seeds of hatred were planted by colonial policy, not by ancient tribal rivalry but by deliberate, divisive rule. The Belgians didn't invent Hutu and Tutsi, but they turned social roles into rigid, racialized identities, erasing centuries of shared history and cooperation. They tore apart a complex society, setting the stage for decades of violence, mistrust, and heartbreak that would haunt Burundi for generations. What was once a small crack became a deep, dangerous divide, one that would prove nearly impossible to heal. The consequences would be catastrophic, echoing through Burundi's history and shaping its future in ways no one could have imagined. By the 1950s, independence was sweeping Africa, and Burundi was ready. But the Belgians switched support from Tutsi to Hutu, deepening mistrust. Burundi gained independence in 1962, led by King Mwambutsa IV and national hero Prince Louis Rwagasore, who preached unity. Rwagasore's assassination shattered hopes for peace. Power struggles, coups, and violence followed. In 1965, a failed Hutu coup led to a brutal Tutsi crackdown. Thousands died, and the cycle of violence began. By 1966, the monarchy was gone, replaced by a Tutsi-led republic. The Hutu majority was shut out of power. Independence's promise quickly turned into ethnic authoritarianism. The stage was set for even darker days. In 1972, tensions exploded. A Hutu rebellion was met with genocidal violence by the Tutsi-led government. Educated Hutus were targeted, up to 300,000 were killed, and many more fled. This, Ikiza, left a permanent scar and fueled cycles of revenge. Hutu refugees formed rebel groups keeping the conflict alive. The world mostly looked away. Sporadic massacres continued through the 1980s and early 1990s. In 1993, Burundi held its first democratic elections. Hutu President Melchior Ndadaye won, then was assassinated months later. His death triggered a brutal civil war. Hutu and Tutsi militias, the army and rebel groups fought for over a decade. Violence tore apart families and communities. The war wasn't fought on battlefields but in villages and neighborhoods. Neighbors became enemies, all because of identities imposed decades earlier. By 2005, the war had devastated Burundi. The wounds would take generations to heal. For ordinary Burundians, war meant daily survival. Fear and suspicion ruled. No one knew who to trust. Schools closed or became barracks. Hospitals were overwhelmed. An entire generation lost their education and safety. The economy collapsed. People relied on aid and subsistence farming. Families were torn apart. Many became refugees or internally displaced. Children were orphaned or forced into fighting. Social life, weddings, funerals, celebrations, nearly disappeared. Yet, even in darkness, people showed resilience. Communities hid and protected each other at great risk. Local leaders and organizations worked for peace and cared for the vulnerable. These acts of courage were rare lights in a bleak time. The human spirit endured, even as the country suffered. After years of war, international mediators brokered the Arusha Peace Agreement in 2000. It created a power-sharing system. No group could dominate government or the military. Ethnic quotas were set for parliament, the cabinet, and security forces. The goal: build trust and prevent future oppression. The main Hutu rebel group joined in 2003, paving the way for elections. In 2005, Pierre Nkurunziza became president, and the civil war officially ended. Refugees returned, schools reopened, and hope returned, cautiously. But deep wounds remained: land disputes, poverty, and impunity for past crimes. True peace required more than a ceasefire. It needed justice and opportunity. In 2015, Nkurunziza's bid for a third term sparked protests, violence, and a new refugee crisis. The government cracked down, opposition was silenced, and fear returned. The dream of stable democracy slipped away. Burundi's future was once again uncertain. What can we learn from Burundi? This small nation's story is more than a headline. It's a powerful reminder of how history, politics, and ordinary people's lives are deeply connected. First, turning people into rigid labels is dangerous. Colonial policies created divisions that didn't have to exist. When outside forces impose identities, the consequences can last for generations. The myth of ancient tribal hatred ignores the real modern roots of conflict. It's easier to blame the past than to face the hard truths about power, inequality, and manipulation. Peace is more than a signature. It needs justice, opportunity, and leaders who put people first. True peace is built every day in classrooms, markets, and homes. Without these, any peace is fragile. Agreements on paper mean little if people don't feel safe or heard. The 2015 crisis proved how quickly progress can unravel if leaders ignore the rule of law. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Today, Burundi faces repression, poverty, and unresolved tensions. Many families still struggle to meet basic needs, and fear lingers in daily life. The new president, Evariste Ndayishimiye, offers some hope, but challenges remain. Change is slow, and trust must be earned, not just promised. Through it all, Burundians have shown resilience, farming, raising families, and hoping for peace. Their spirit endures even in the toughest times. The lesson: never give up on peace, no matter how hard it seems. Even small acts of kindness and courage can make a difference. Small countries matter, and their stories hold lessons for us all. Burundi's journey reminds us that every nation's struggle is part of our shared human story. Support grassroots peace, understand complex histories, and pay attention. Real change starts with listening and learning. Burundi's quest for peace is a lesson for the world, reminding us that hope, resilience, and unity can light the way forward, even in the darkest times.